Hi, and welcome to the Grit and Grace podcast. My name is Tonya Bruton, and I am your host for the show. And I'm so glad that you're here listening today. I pray this episode finds you blessed in the Lord, as always. I am happy to bring a new guest to you today, Miss Lisa Jo Barr. And just let me give you a brief introduction. Lisa Jo is the founder and coach at Health to Happiness Coaching, where she specializes in working with those in recovery from mental health and or addiction. She herself has lived experience with both, including bipolar 1, complex PTSD, debilitating suicidal depressions, and anxiety. She has battled with addiction most of her life and is in recovery for sex, cocaine, and food addiction. She now coaches others still struggling, in addition to working at a mental health center as an adult outpatient peer specialist. She is the author of The Pit of Despair: How God, Prayer, and the 12 Steps Saved My Life from Addiction, which will be available everywhere books are sold on June 11th, 2024. Lisa Jo, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Oh, I'm honored to have you. So, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your personal testimony and background and how you were inspired to get started in coaching?
Sure. Well, it's a long story, but let me tell it. When I was 21, I had my first psychotic manic episode. And when I was 30, I was diagnosed with complex PTSD. My 20s were a hot mess. It was very hard for me to regulate my emotional life. And I have worked very, very hard at trying just about anything. I would study different things, different psychology, different techniques about how to manage these conditions. And I also have been in therapy since I was 21. That really helped. And by the grace of God, I'm able to manage these conditions. I've been in addiction recovery since 2007. And the philosophy is to address the addictions that are killing you fastest first. That was my sex and my cocaine addiction. I was doing very dangerous things in both. And then when I combined them, God told me, you're going to die if you keep this up. So I woke up on my birthday after a night of quote unquote partying, which is not a party, being an addict. I walked to the 7-Eleven to get some cigarettes. Someone had busted out all my car windows. I neglected to take my laptop in to my home from my car. And when you're in Chicago, this is when I lived in Chicago, you can't leave any of your valuables in your car. People will break and steal. And so my laptop had been stolen, and in that laptop bag was backup of all my writing I had done for the past 3 years. So I lost everything. I started crying, and I heard God's voice tell me, this is just an object. This could have been your life. Get back into the program. So the program meant for me working a 12-step program. Throughout my 30s, I hooked up with some executive coaches. I was on a leadership development team at my work, which was United Airlines at the time. So I developed some leadership skills, and I was guided by a coach to start making money from my writing. I've been a writer my whole life, and I started freelance writing and actually making money instead of writing for free. And after being coached, I've been coached by 4 different executive coaches in my life. I'm 53 now. And I had started a writer's group, and it just naturally progressed where a woman asked me if I would coach her because I had expressed during the group that I was going to start coaching. So I coached her the same ways, different ways that I had been coached. And she started her own ministry as a result, which was really exciting for me to watch. And just, I'm so happy for her. Um, yeah, so that's the long and short of it.
Right. Well, that's really cool. That's amazing. And I like how you said that God guided you to the program. A lot of people don't realize that the 12 steps is a spiritual program. They kind of think of it as a whole separate thing, but it is definitely a spiritual program and a spiritual experience. God's all in that program. I use it myself. We have so much in common. I mean, we're close to the same age. We've got the same middle name. We both love to write. We've got some of the same mental health issues. So, and some of the same addiction issues are it had, excuse me, but and thank God we got free from that. But and I think it's great what you're doing to help others. But as far as like you mentioned your personal experience with trauma and mental health conditions and addictions, um, how does that affect how you connect with your clients? Does that, the NA says that the therapeutic value of one addict helping another addict is without parallel. Do you see that in your coaching, that it's that they find that beneficial to in relating to you? Is that because that you've been through it as well?
Absolutely. I work as a peer specialist at a mental health center, and the philosophy behind that is peer to peer. I'm up here, there's no power dynamic in my work uh, as a peer. Also in the 12-step program, as you know, it's like the first peer-to-peer organization that existed, in my opinion, and it works lived when you have shared lived experience. It's very powerful to be able to help each other because you don't know exactly what that person's experience has been, but you've had similar experience and you can help each other. Anytime whether I'm a sponsor, a peer specialist, a life coach, I always learn just as much, if not more, from that person or that client than they could ever learn from me, is how I feel. And it's so rewarding. It doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like a job. It is work. Sometimes it's hard work,
Hmm.
but I love it. And God placed me in this position, and every day I am blown away by that and so grateful. But I praise God for his great work.
That's awesome. And I like how you say that you get more, just as much, if not more, out of working with them as they do with you. And that sounds like a lot like sponsorship, which sounds like bringing that up as well. But so what does coaching look like? And is it similar to sponsorship, or how does that work? I mean, how often do you see them, or I guess
Mhm.
get together with them or sessions or whatever? What does that look like?
What that basically looks like is meeting with someone once a week over the phone or on Zoom. The difference between sponsorship is more like, for me at least, my experience has been the difference being more firm in my suggestions with someone or calling them out on. All of us addicts were liars, right? When we were in our addiction, we lied. So actually, in my coaching too, I call people out, but in a more gentle way. Um, there's a lot of similarities in that it's peer to peer, and um, I forgot the rest of your question. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's fine. Yeah, you answered it. I thought, yeah, you answered it to what I can recall that I asked. Yeah. So, my next question was going to be if you could share a specific example of someone that you had got to the position of being a thriver. And you briefly brought that up, but can you tell a little bit more about that story?
About the story that I mentioned, or do you want a different story?
Or a different one would be great too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I started working with this gentleman who was in his 30s and he still lived with his parents. And his father is an alcoholic. There was a lot of abuse. His whole spirit just seemed like it had been beaten down. He didn't believe in himself. He was just sort of existing, not enjoying life. I started working with him a couple of years ago, and during the course of our us working together, we worked with each other for about 4 or 5 months. He became he started making more money and saving it. So by the time we were done, he saved over $12,000, was preparing to move out of his family's house for the first time. He struggled from depression, anxiety, and I taught him how to take baby steps instead of giant leaps. And those baby steps really create a momentum in the positive direction and they add up. And then all of a sudden you're going in the direction you want to head. I also teach people how to live a value-driven life and explore what their values are and how to drive your life according to them. Another situation was I had another client who had a block in his, I believe that wealth and worthiness are connected. So didn't, he had some blocks about some money myths that he believed that came from his family of origin. So I have a few tools up my sleeve about how to address that and how to break free of it. Within 3 weeks, he was renting, him and his wife were renting an apartment. He just had a young child. They were struggling. Within 3 weeks, a house fell into his lap. No mortgage, no nothing. So they didn't have to pay rent anymore. And it opened up this whole new lifestyle for them where they could
Wow.
save, they had money to even save for their child's college. Isn't that
Wow.
something? And I'm
Wow.
not
Yes.
responsible for that. My clients do the work. I give them tools.
Right.
They do all the work.
Right. Well, that's awesome. I mean, maybe I need a life coach.
I'm
I mean,
available.
well, I mean, what does it look like? Like say our first session together, what kind of questions do you ask? And say more about this living a value-driven life. I really like what you said there.
Well, living a value-driven life, values are the things that you hold most dearest and most important to your heart. And if you're not connected to what that is, you don't know which direction you want to head that's going to give you the most fulfilling, purpose-filled, meaningful life. Once you figure out your values, you can then drive your life accordingly and have them really open up to support a life that is both meaningful, um, can really learn how to live because you're living according to what you value. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And so for me, I'm trying to think like I should know what my values are.
If
But
someone doesn't know their values either, I have exercises to help people figure
oh, okay.
that out too.
Okay, because that
So,
it kind of disturbed me when I was thinking, well, I'm like, well, what are my values? And I'm like, well, I should know what my values are. I mean, I know that I love to spend time with my family. I
okay, so
mean,
you
it's
value family, right?
right, and I do value. I would love to be. I like to be able to help others in some way to like, well, I mean, like you're doing, or in some way, shape, or form. I'm starting out with this podcast, but to try to bring stories to people that will encourage
Mhm.
them and lift them up. That's kind of the whole point.
So
Um,
you value people and being of service to humanity, sounds like.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool how you do that. So is it kind of just like when you're coaching, is it kind of a Q&A and then you get the information and you kind of give them direction according to the information they give you, or?
Well, what I do is I do a free 20-minute session to begin with, just to get a feel of if I'm a good fit for them, if they think I'll be a good fit for them, if if it feels right. And then if it does, I'll just meet the person where they're at and ask them questions about what are you wanting your life to really look like?
Oh, yeah.
What are some goals you have? What is your vision for yourself? What are, if you dream big, what's in your heart? Sky's the limit. If there was nothing in your path that could stop you, what would you want? Just things like that, just to get
Hmm.
get people connected to their dreams, and then there are different forms of goals that we get into once we start coaching. Um, After the initial session, if they want to continue and this journey with me, then I send them a questionnaire with more detailed information, questions about, what are 3 areas you want to see the most improvement in your life? What is stopping you? What are some blocks? And just different things like that. And my approach is to meet someone where they're at instead of me having an agenda. Just being present with a person, listening attentively, actively, and going from there, letting them lead, and then also giving my input and suggestions that they can take. They can take it or leave it, kind of just like sponsorship. But
Right.
it's really it's more it's more structured than sponsorship in some ways, but it's also similar in some ways. So,
So, how do you measure success in this as far as, like you say, they could take it or leave it? Or some people may take it and only take some of it, or may take longer than others to get to where they're, because everybody's situation is different, I'm sure, that comes to you. Some people may have different goals that may take longer to achieve, or different things they're trying to work out. So, to me, that's kind of a gray area, but how do you measure whether or not you've succeeded with a client?
really, it's a happiness factor. How happy does this person seem, or how satisfied do they feel in their life since we've been working together? If it's accomplishing certain mile markers, have you moved toward that? Maybe not quite there yet, but are you moving in a positive momentum toward your values and goals and dreams and visions? Or are you kind of staying the same? Which
That, yeah,
I've never had anybody stay the same. There's always a lot of growth. I'm
that's
very
good. That's
happy
good.
for my clients because they're living lives that look so much different than when they were using drugs or when they didn't know how to manage their mental health. And one of my philosophies is that it's horrible having mental health and addiction that's out of control. It's great to be able to manage those things. It's like night and day. But to move beyond that and actually thrive in your life and go for your dreams, a lot of people stop at the management part. And it's
Right.
almost like they settle because it's so much better than where they were. I help people take it a step further into thriving in their lives. We look at things like, or some of the things that I address are, what's your entourage? Who do you surround yourself with? Do you need to amp up your social life, because connection is really important in all of our lives. Another thing I address, if a person, if the subject comes up, is drawing boundaries. Boundaries are a way of teaching people how to treat you.
Mm.
If we don't have good boundaries, it's going to be difficult for us to focus our energy on what we really want, because it's just kind of scattered and we're giving away too much of ourselves. So there's boundaries. Let's see, what else do I touch on? Learning how to have fun. Some people don't know that. If we've been in survivor mode trying to manage these conditions, if we're in survivor mode, there's no room for fun. We're surviving.
Right.
Know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And well, and learning how to as well, learning how to have fun um outside of drugs and alcohol. What
Yes.
we have to rethink and rediscover and relearn what is fun to us. I mean, sitting in a hotel for hours a day doing the same thing repetitively for hours on end used to be fun. But what when you get clean and sober, and you start managing your mental health, you have to it's a whole new world. You have to discover what you want, what you like, what you love all over again. So that makes perfect sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes
And
perfect sense.
as you probably know, the whole concept of people, places, things, we have to change that in order for us to manage these things. However, in order to go from management to thriving, you have to change the people, places, things also in your life.
Hmm, that's good. That's good.
So I
Yeah,
help assist people in moving in that direction. And I'm a living example of that. I used to be, quite frankly, a hot mess, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Um, Now I'm living the life of my dreams, helping other people, um, writing a book that got picked up by a New York publisher. It's basically a memoir about my addiction experience and how God and prayer and the 12 steps saved my life. Um, I never thought I would get that down on paper, have the courage to really. I have a mentor, he said, make sure you put the emotion on the page. And it was hard. I would
I
cry.
bet.
I would cry sometimes. And then a couple days later, after writing it, it felt like an eagle, a weight had been lifted, and it was like an eagle flying away. I can't stress how much writing is cathartic if you feel your feelings. That's another
Right.
thing us addicts don't like to do, is feel our feelings, right?
Right. So
Yeah.
true. So true. And that's what I was thinking too, is like if I was to write mine, which the Lord's been pushing me toward that, and I kind of started, but but that's the thing, is you're reliving it when you're writing it,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes.
and feeling it again. And so but that's what I was about to ask you about the book, as far as just a few technical questions just because of my own personal interest. But I was going to ask you, were you self-publishing or what? But you already answered that. But I am curious, if you don't mind me asking, how that happened, as far as it getting picked up by a publisher. Were you submitting to submitting your manuscript to them, or?
Well, the funny thing is, I I'm on LinkedIn, and a
Uh-huh.
man friended tried to connect with me on LinkedIn, who is an acquisition editor for Morgan James Publishing House in New York. So we became connections on LinkedIn. He just so happens to live in Castle Rock, which is like a suburb of Denver. I
Wow.
asked him if I could take him out for a cup of coffee and talk about the book industry, and he's had his hand in like almost 100 different books, writing them himself, and he wrote his name is Terry Whalen. and he wrote a biography on Billy Graham. And this man was brilliant. He gave me so much insight. I shared with him an outline of a different book, and he said, I would love to be the first one to see this once you have a book proposal. Well, he wrote a book about writing a book proposal, nonfiction book proposal, that I purchased. I put that book aside because it was very overwhelming. I was still struggling with some negative messages that I received as a little girl from my dad, who would always tell me, you're going to starve in a gutter even if you try to become a writer. And I understand why he said that. It's not something you should tell your kid. But he grew up in poverty, and he wanted me to get a job that was stable or whatever, that sometimes
Right.
writers don't make it. Just a poverty
Right.
mindset kind of thing. But that really had quite a quite an impact on me. But anyway, so what happened was I one morning at like 2 a.m. I woke up and practically sleepwalked to my file cabinet, opened up a file that was prayers that I had been writing for years. I turned on the light, I put it down, and God told me, see, I counted them. There were 85 at the time. And he said, see, God, I heard God's voice say, see, your book has already been written. Your first book has already
Wow.
been written. So I pursued and ran with that. And I have a wonderful mentor in Chicago named Robert Slayton, who helped guide me by the grace of God. These are Christian men who are good hearts that God has put in my life. And my mentor has written 4 books and has given me some guidance on what I needed to put into place as far as discipline. Because I have a full-time job, it's like I needed to discipline myself to write the book. I know I'm kind of going back and forth, but with that in mind, I wrote a book proposal according to the book that Terry had written, and I decided to submit the book proposal to him. And he presented it. He's an acquisition editor, so he acquires the book ideas to present to his publishing board. And he did that, and the publishing board was interested in my idea. Terry said we don't usually publish something so small, so it was 18,000 words, and he gave me some insight about the binding of the book. You want to be able to really read the title, so it has to be thicker. If it's small and tiny print on the binding. So I went from 18,500 words to 60,000 words, which is a 200-page book, turned it into a memoir, weaved the prayers that I've written throughout the book. And at the point that I revised and revamped the structure of my book to be longer, it took me 4 months to write it, which
Wow.
is an absolute miracle because I have struggled to write books. I've been a writer. Writing is self-care for me. I've journaled all my life, written
Same.
poetry. I've done a lot of freelance work, articles, copywriting, all sorts of stuff. I did a volunteer project with of the American Red Cross. I was the lead writer, and I did some technical writing for them on preparedness for high level executives to prepare for disaster at their companies. So
Yeah.
I've done all different kinds. I'm like a Renaissance writer. I've done a little bit
Yeah.
of everything, you know. But this book, I am just thrilled. I am thrilled to the max that it's going to help a lot of people. And
I bet.
I envision it really helping sex addicts who are women because there's so much
Yes.
shame attached to that.
Yes. Right. Oh, you're so, yeah, you're right on. I love that.
Because men are given a high five when they go around like that, but women are shamed tremendously, as you know, in our society, in most societies. So I want to I'm shedding light on that. I share my story in a very candid and conversational way. And I just want people to know they're not alone and that if I can do it, they can do it too. Those are
Lisa
my
Jo,
two.
yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off. You're so inspiring. You're inspiring me.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, sometimes the guests do that with me. I get inspired myself. Uh, like, I don't know, I've got to check you out even further as far as like your coaching goes because maybe you can fix me up.
I can totally fix you.
Um,
We have so
so
much in common, including we have an orange tabbies.
yeah, right,
Parties.
right. Well, and I mean, I've been journaling since I was 17. I started journaling back then because I had had a daughter early on in life, and she was a baby, but she ended up needing an organ transplant. And it's a long story. I've told it on the show before, but basically, just being alone in that environment. Back then we didn't have cell phones, so calling home, I was just alone at the hospital. I was, 16,
Wow.
17 years old and didn't have my family around because that hospital to some places that could do that was far away from home. So in my isolation I turned to journaling, and a lot of it was like you say, just prayers, just God, I'm lonely, or God, heal my baby, or God, why haven't you healed my baby, or or just all kind of things. And throughout the years, on and off, I've journaled, and I've kept them all. And and I got an English degree, and I haven't been using it. So maybe I need to hit you up. But and I could do that on, what is it? It's lisajobar.com, correct?
Yes.
With two R's, Lisa Jo.
LisaJoBarr.com. LisaJoBarr.com. Yes.
And that's
Joe with
where,
the J-O.
right, J-O. Yeah, exactly. Mine's spelled the same way as well. As it should be for a girl. But is that how, so why don't you go ahead and, as we're coming to a close, let the listeners know, how they can get in touch with you, your website, and, how they can reach out to you to get in touch with you for your coaching services.
Sure. On my website, there's a section that says contact me or contact, and you can fill it. It's a fill out format, or you can just email me. It's real easy to remember. LisaJoBarr@gmail.com. And I'll be in touch with you either way. I'd be happy to talk with you all and see
Yeah,
how I can help you.
you
You
may
do
be
the
here.
work, but
You may be
I
hearing from
just
me.
love being alongside people on their journey to health and happiness.
That's so wonderful. I'm so excited about it. I'm excited to hear that just a sister in the Lord and a former addict and someone who has the same mental health struggles. I'm happy to see you succeeding, and well, and not just succeeding, but like you say, thriving, going beyond settling for just being okay.
Hmm.
And congratulations on the book. Wow. I mean, really, I mean, just finishing it's one thing, but congratulations for having someone pick it up on your success there. I think that's awesome. And I've just enjoyed so much talking with you today.
Likewise.
I may hit you up or within the week because I'm very interested. I never really, I've heard of coaching services before,
Hmm.
but I guess I never really knew the full benefits of it. I never really looked into it that much.
Hmm.
I have a couple of friends that have coaches, and they seem to be doing really well in their lives.
I
So,
have a coach right now myself, and
yeah,
just an amazing human being that we have the synergy, and it just propels me forward closer and
yes,
closer and of higher and higher. So
right,
I
yes,
really recommend it to people, even if you don't hire me as a coach, pursue it. There's
right.
a coach out there for you that can help you.
Awesome, awesome. Well, is there anything else before we close, Lisa Jo, that you would like any the listeners to know?
That's a real open-ended question.
Or
Well,
I guess did I leave anything out that you're burning to say
yeah,
or
yeah.
anything? Yeah.
Well, I'm very approachable. I love people, as I mentioned before. I would love to connect with you, with your listeners, even if you want to just connect with me and um, just say hi. I love to connect with people. I just, it's one of my greatest values, and um, all of us, I believe, God put us all here to help support each other. And
Right.
by God's grace, I'm where I'm at, and everybody, and I'm a work in progress, just like everyone else. Um, I really want to thank you so much for letting me be on your show. It's been a wonderful conversation, Tonya.
Oh, well, thank you. It's been an honor. I appreciate it. And I appreciate your patience and everything with the technical issues we had this morning. But definitely appreciate having you on, and I will be in touch with you again soon. Just please stay on after, and we'll have a quick chit chat before we go. But all right, so this wraps up another episode of the Grit and Grace podcast. I do, as always, like I said, appreciate you listening. I appreciate all of you who are consistently supporting the show, not just by listening, but those of you who are commenting on the YouTube videos or commenting on the Facebook posts. You're sharing the episodes. I just want you to know that that does not go unnoticed. I appreciate it, every one of you, so much. I pray that you would just be blessed for the rest of your week, and tune in next week to the Grit and Grace podcast. For now, bye bye.